Here. It's good to be alive. 5 days a week, Aristotle Full Throttle. We talk about movies, we talk about fun stuff. Today, I'm very excited because rejoining the Aristotle Full Throttle broadcast, we have very special intellectual, artistic, animator, creator, podcaster himself, Mr. Mallon. Thank you for being on the show today.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Now, Mallon, I'm gonna refer to you by your first and last name every time I talk to you. Mallon.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
You, just as most of the world, and me, myself included, find Jim Carrey to be beloved, a beloved entertainer. Very fun, very engaging. Tell me the first time you encountered a Jim Carrey piece of work.
Oh man, I'm gonna age myself here, but in Living Color.
In Living
I
Color?
used to watch that with my dad. It was it was one of those, like, SNL existed forever, right? But in Living Color was the first kind of like Mad TV is also like this, but it kind of like hit a different audience and a different group. Let's call it urban.
Right.
But so I used to watch that like crazy. But that one guy on that cast who was just stand out was Jim Carrey, because he was just like a rubber man. He was just my favorite character. I think I saw first was Fire Marshal Bill. I don't know if you remember that guy.
Oh my god, let me show you something. He'd end up lighting himself on fire almost every time.
Yeah.
I mean, literally every time. It was such a great
Sure.
recurring character.
Yeah, and what's that workout chick he did too, where he was like this like
Vera DeMilo. That was very hilarious. Go ahead.
Do all these like extreme physical things. I think that's what, like, I don't know. He probably hurt himself so badly throughout the years, but like just that character in particular, he would do this one move where he'd stand up straight and then like collapse immediately backwards, like
Yeah.
flat on his back, like with his neck bending his knees, like how did you not hurt yourself?
The dude
Physical
is
comment.
made of rubber.
Yeah.
I was always impressed by that. It was always funny because that show in particular has so many Hollywood like mega stars, like Jamie Foxx and J Lo, and some may argue Shawn Wayne's.
all the Waynes, all the Waynes.
Yeah, all the Wayne's.
Yeah. And all those shows that spin off from that, I used to watch all those shows too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The Wayne brothers. I think we talked about that last time. Why do we always talk about the Wayne's brothers?
Because they're significant in Hollywood history. Brothers.
They're brothers, singing, and they're happy, and they're colored.
That's so good. It's funny because I love that show in particular, in Living Color, because it was a show mainly featuring folks of color, which was not a thing that happened. It was a sketch comedy show, prime time, Sunday night, and every week it was fun to go, hey, look how we, people of color, I can speak for myself. I was always like, this is a funny angle. Nobody's seeing this angle. But, it's a really funny to put that in mainstream. It's so politically incorrect too. I don't know how well it would go over today.
Mad TV, I feel like was taking notes from that as well, and then that continued on to Chappelle's Show, and that kind of like genre of definitely people of colors is the audience, the main, even like Mind of Mencia was like an offshoot, different group there, but it was refreshing, obviously, because unlike, especially during the must see TV era, where there's like a lot of these like TV shows, it's all white cast or whatever, so it's nice to have like a cast that's just multi.
Yeah.
But I think after In Living Color, it was probably Ace Ventura that was like immediately got me hooked, because that movie was just like his performances, like the character was just such a powerful, strong character. Visceral.
That role was ridiculous. I remember going to see it opening weekend, Ace Ventura. But I, in fact, am going to date myself even further. Because when I was very young, my older brothers would take me to the movies, and we went and saw a movie called Once Bitten.
Yes, I've seen that. Yes,
that
that's pre Jim Carrey era Jim Carrey. Yeah, that's like you go back and you go, oh my, but you saw it in the original.
I saw it in the movies, but I don't remember it being Jim Carrey, because exactly what you said, it was pre Jim Carrey, because it was years later where I was like, oh, I saw that movie with that guy, and there were a few other movies like that he was in. Peggy Sue Gets Married or something like
Earth
that.
Girls Are Easy.
Earth Girls Are Easy. He was in that with
terrible
David Wayne.
movie. Terrible movie. Who's that? Jeff Goldblum as well.
Yeah,
he's like the sexy alien.
They're all sexy aliens. They're all covered in fur, and like Gina Davis, they have to clear. And not downtown Julie Brown, but Julie Brown from MTV was in that.
Mm-hmm.
This is really dated, guys. If you
people watching this like, who the hell are you talking? That's how we feel when we hear names nowadays.
It is. I lost you on the feed here on Instagram. I don't know.
Oh, really? My phone.
You can come back. What's up? That's extensive. I know he had like kind of a trying life growing up in Canada. I know that he spent many years, or just several years, living in the car with his family, and coming up with comedy and coming up with his act, which
to make his mother laugh, who was like, she had like some major illness or something. Right?
Yeah, and it's one of those stories that you're like, this guy really did all he could do, which was to turn his face into rubber to get out of where he was at. And I always thought that was like, where there's a will, there's a way, and he's one of those examples. And Ace Ventura was one of those movies that completely came out of all of the physical comedy that he does in particular, that's so specific to him. Mm-hmm. And people were afraid of it. Mm-hmm. they weren't sure that it was gonna.
Like Once Bitten was Jim Carrey on 5, and then Ace Ventura showed us what Jim Carrey's like on 10, 11, 12, or whatever.
11,000.
Yeah, it kept on getting worse. I think Liar Liar was like a peak. I remember in the I think in the credits of that they have like outtakes, and it's they show like the failed takes, and like they call him an overactor in one of them.
Yeah, she's like overactor. She yells it, yeah. I remember that. I just laughed so hard because it's like, but the thing is he overacting, or is he just being true to his style? Like what he's doing is working. It works in movies. It's funny. Yet critics, now this is a thing notoriously I remember throughout the 90s. I told you this the other day where I was like, I kind of discovered by default that I was a Jim Carrey fan, because every time I saw a preview for like Ace Ventura, I was like, I want to go see that movie. Then The Mask came out, and I was like, that looks awesome. Let me go check that out. And as each movie came out, I really wanted to go see it, and I really enjoyed them when I went to see them. But all the critics at the time were like, this guy can't act. He doesn't know what he's doing. Mm-hmm. And what do you think of that? Do you think?
It's, I don't know. I think there's like an imaginary line that gets created in that any sort of realm of expression, I guess, and then people sort of break it. And the 90s was a good era for that. I don't know if we talked about Michael Jordan last time, but Michael Jordan was a line breaker. He's just sort of stepping over what everyone determined was like, we're pushing the boundaries. He comes over and he like knocks the boundaries over and redraws the line like 10 feet away. So the same idea is like, I think there was a physical comedy aspect that was considered like, that's hokey, that's like vaudevillian, that's, comedy, refined comedy is subtle, but then you have your Chris Farleys and you have your physical comedians, and I don't know, I think I think for what he did, I think that, is there such a thing as the try not to laugh at Jim Carrey challenge? Is that a thing? Because
I hope so, because get those critics there and be like, okay, critics, watch this and try not to laugh.
Give me some of the coldest, like, incel motherfucker to watch this shit and like see if he can make it through without, like laughing.
Yeah. That always reminds me of like people when you say a joke and they're like, ha ha ha, that's so dumb. they, but I'm like, wait a second, is it done?
Yeah.
Because you just laughed, and
Right.
that's all I was going for.
The power of the dad joke, right?
Yeah.
That's
Exactly. Dad
no,
jokes.
but physical comedy. You know, Chaplin. And, you know, I think we mentioned this last time. Is you know, like having this like ability to communicate beyond language. It's physical comedy. It's a form of dance, sort of too. You know, you're expressing through your body, and then what he does with his face. It's cartoonish. It's the same idea of what, you know, we like about Disney animations. It's the exaggerated emotion, and to say that he's, again, I think that the criticism of him being a bad actor is because of the exaggeration. Again, subtlety being some sort of like art form or whatever.
Yeah.
I guess that's fine if you're like some stone-faced actor in like some drama and you want to just give the slightest bit of impression with a raise of your eyebrow. Yeah, I guess that's great acting, but like that doesn't mean that the opposite isn't good acting. You know, it's especially if the goal is to make people laugh.
That kind of reminds me of another sort of argument that I like to make, or at least like challenge people's thought on, and then I'll get to a couple of these comments we've got. Someone was saying he's like a living cartoon, the Savage Khan over on Twitch. If they don't laugh, meaning the critics, they are dead inside, says the Savage Khan. Hey, Vidre. And Candyland says, my dad hates Jim Carrey. He thinks he's a wannabe Dick Van Dyke.
Okay,
But
that's accurate.
I mean, and Jerry Lewis. You could say Jerry Lewis kind of
sure,
preceded that.
Sure.
I think he is a wannabe at the beginning, and then he becomes very specifically him. Because, you know, if you look at a lot of early Jerry Lewis doing those pratfalls and stuff and being so zany, you're like, wow, Jim Carrey can imitate that perfectly in the late 80s era. And then in the, I think he really made his bones on In Living Color, coming up with new characters that he could express and find his own way with. But a lot of people will say about the subtlety being the art form. And like people will say, and I'm a fan of Lady Gaga. I think Lady Gaga is an excellent songwriter. She happens to specialize in writing pop songs, but people go, well, you know, pop music is frivolous. And it's like, well, no, she's really good at writing pop songs. She could write folk songs like Bob Dylan would with an acoustic guitar in like a coffee shop, and that's fine. Why do we give him cred and not someone who could write it in a different genre? Right.
Go search the videos of her when she used to play under her name back when she was living in Long Island or whatever, and just playing her own songs before she was Lady Gaga. There's obvious songwriting ability there, you know, classical style. The fact that she took it to another level to say, you know what, you got to go beyond this. That's a lesson that everyone could learn. It's just like, okay, skill is good, but like she made an icon too. Like there's a style aspect, there's a visual aspect, there's an artistic aspect, there's a fashion. You know?
Yeah, you really get the sense that she's driving the creative train.
She's a thing, you know, she's an entity. I like that, you know, I think it's more powerful than just being a musician alone, you know. And that's the difference is I think a lot of musicians look at it and go, oh, that's not songwriting, or a lot of songwriters. Well, you know, it's not just that, you know, try doing what she has to do on stage, you know, choreographed dance moves. Yeah, man, it's a performance too, you know, it's a whole thing.
And the thing I like about Jim Carrey is I feel like he's way more on the performance side. And I do believe he works with writers. He'll have like I think Bob Odenkirk was one of his co-writers usually. So whenever he would make an appearance on a talk show or at an awards show, he would have some kind of performative costume or some kind of weird speech planned. But it was usually written for him. But the thing is, if you write for Jim Carrey, he can take it to where it needs to go and beyond, I think. I think that the comedy part might be Jim Carrey's Achilles heel. I don't know. He's pretty funny. But when you write for him, when you write gold for this guy, he can like take it to places. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and you know, it's hard to say. And I always wonder when these kind of movies, like how much of this is improvised on the spot. And a guy like that, you know, he's improvising a lot of it. And some of the funniest scenes, like I think of what's that one where he plays the Mountie, and he's Irene, me, myself, and Irene. Right. And there's a scene where he gets bad cotton mouth, and like his lip just kind of, you know, goes like this. and you can't. Is that in the script? Is you know, like, and it's
Right.
one of the funniest parts of the movie. So you know, it's, and again with just, you know, to go back, so I don't want to jump ahead here, but there's like Ace Ventura 2, you know, that I think where it started. I think when Ace Ventura 2 came out, that's when the Jim Carrey thing was starting to get a little overbearing, because that, just like all sequels, it takes everything to the next level.
Yeah.
It still has great scenes. I still like that movie, but it's definitely not as novel as the first one, as tight as a film, so to speak. The second one is kind of lots of room for him to just kind of
just be over the top. Yeah.
Yeah. The Monopoly guy scene, for instance, like that whole thing. It's like,
I remember that being,
and hearing about the whole rhino scene before actually going to see it.
Yes, that's exactly what I was picturing.
Oh my God! And then experiencing it, I think I almost died laughing. It was the funniest thing I'd ever seen at that point.
Someone had described the scene to me before I saw it, and then I watched it, and it was just still outlived the description.
I didn't believe them. I was like, no, that didn't happen on film.
So,
you can't say that.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a scene in which Ace Ventura, pet detective, is hiding within a fake rhinoceros, and it's getting very hot and sweaty inside there because, you know, his movies. And he's got to
warm.
He's got to take himself. He's got to. So basically, the visual, and probably how it's written in the script, is like, gets too hot in the rhinoceros, has to escape, extricate himself from the rhinoceros, appears like the rhinoceros is giving birth to Jim Carrey, and then he creates a performance out of that. He creates a whole dance, if you will.
Yeah, it was and there's you know, there is a dance. It's like different measures of it too. It's like first he's like trying to get out, and then the family shows up, and they're like, look, the rhino's giving birth.
It's amazing.
If you're wondering why we laugh so hard at this, because this is hitting perfect spot for us. I don't know if what it means or what the deeper ramifications of this. I don't really care. I just know if I need to laugh, that's the kind of thing to do it for me.
He is one of those guys, and you know, I was saying earlier, like, it takes a good writer to write jokes for him, maybe for a talk show appearance, because he's usually loaded up with really good jokes whenever he appears. So he's always a very good guest on shows. But on the flip side of that, in a script, it can just be like, have you ever seen a man eat his own head? Or maybe that's an improvised line, probably is. And then he just tries to start eating his own head. And you're just like, all right, this is a guy that you just need to keep rolling the camera on him because something is going to happen. One of my favorite lines in Dumb and Dumber, and I mentioned it so many times, and I think you've mentioned it before too, but it's just when Jim Carrey in Dumb and Dumber is walking out of the 7-Eleven and he sees two guys standing there, and he just stops and he's like, hey guys, big gulps, huh? All right. It's just...
oh man, did I lose you on Instagram again? My phone just shuts off. Oh, here we go. Poor connection.
Oh, no worries. We still got this mainstream. Guys, on Instagram, in case you're missing out on anything, you can always go to twitch.tv/AristotleFullThrottle, and you can catch up, rewind the show, comment, do all of the things. Even on YouTube, AristotleFullThrottle.com. Welcome back to the Instagram. I'll keep an eye on that. Jen the Fierce says, loved him in Dumb and Dumber and Bruce Almighty. Yeah, there's like 10 years of just classic Jim Carrey. Every movie that came out in the 90s and probably up until about, I even like the Penguin movie.
The Penguin movie? Wait, what am I?
Mr. Something's Penguin Face, I think it's
called. I don't think I saw that one. I think that's one I
Jim Carrey.
Penguin movie.
I'll put his IMDb up, and we can kind of like go through this catalog of just kind of Mr. Popper's Penguins.
I saw this meme that I thought, about Jim Carrey too. It was an Adam Sandler. It was comparing him and Adam Sandler, it was one of Adam Sandler's movies, and the meme was essentially saying that Jim Carrey could do Adam Sandler's part, but Adam Sandler couldn't do the mask, you know. So
Right.
and that's an important thing. Is like The Mask, for instance. That was a movie that was, I think I saw that in the theaters as well, and then watched it a million times beyond that. But it was just one of those things. It's just like so many scenes and so many memorable like comic, cartoonish moments. You know, I really like that movie. You know, I think that's kind of like a really tight movie too. It's got a dance number in it. If that may make or break it for you. But
To me, that's classic Hollywood. If you
mhm,
could do like insert a dance number in a kind of a goofy way, the
mhm.
Chicky Boom Boom or whatever the song was,
I thought it was good too. It was a
yeah,
good dance number.
and it's introducing Cameron Diaz.
Cameron Diaz, right? Who before that was like what, a model or something, or no, she was like a secretary or something in the one of these companies that were producing it or something.
Huh,
They were like,
that-
hey, what are you doing? Hey, come here. It's one of
let's
those
make
stories.
you the love interest in The Mask.
Right,
She,
right.
uh, it's funny because that movie they said how much they saved on CGI because Jim
Mhm, right.
Carrey they made it makeup enough so that it could like reveal his face. Same thing with the Grinch, that he
Mhm.
could just do so much with his facial expressions and his body that they didn't have to animate it later. They just they did all the stuff in camera, a lot of stuff in camera, and then just accentuated his like eyeballs popping out with CG and stuff. Um,
Yeah, I remember those shots actually being interesting too, because that was fairly new to see like kind
mhm.
of those kind of like, oh, I
Oh,
lost you.
yeah, I'm here. I'm still here. I can hear you. The problem is, I've got like this little power thing that if I touch it, it'll go off. So I'm back.
You've got the power. All right,
Indeed.
so yeah, Dumb and Dumber for the longest time that was like the funniest movie of all time for me. That was just like
Oh my
a
God. Yeah.
go-to, like the comedy of my generation. But yeah, Bruce Almighty was also a pretty good film. You know, just solid story. You know that just at the same Truman Show as well. Truman Show is like one of those movies where you reference it I believe there's an actual term for that scientific type of experiment, but the shorthand is Truman Show. Truman Show,
Yeah.
and,
And
and I
that
thought
is,
that was one of his like first like really heartwarming, like really intense movies, because
he was working with layers in that.
yeah.
He wasn't like one note. He definitely showed like he was, he was that guy. He was Truman, the
Mhm.
happy-go-lucky, friendly dude. But once he starts to realize that his world isn't what he thinks it is, he's keeping up the facade of the happy-go-lucky guy, and there's so much more working underneath. And that was really cool to see Jim Carrey actually be able to pull that off, and we're like, oh, there's more to this guy. And of course, that's also around the time he played Andy Kaufman, and we could probably talk a lot
Oh
on
boy,
that.
yeah, I saw that one in the theaters too, and
Yeah.
my stepfather is a huge fan of like that era of comedy, and Kaufman in particular. So we went to go see that, and I think initially I was like, I don't know, he's like, it feels like Jim Carrey like playing another one of his characters and not really embodying the Kaufman. And then you hear the stories of like what went into him making that and the method acting he was going through. It's like, um, uh, I don't know, it's problematic, but I like the story overall. I like the overall like uh, biopic, I guess. Um, but it's not one of my favorite performances of his. Just because
Yeah.
I don't know. Andy was his own like thing, and Jim Carrey's his own thing. And I think mixing them, there's like literally what happened. Did they say happened in that documentary? It was like these two egos, and then you throw in the other character in there, the lounge singer. Then it's like
Yeah,
it's too
yeah.
much.
Tony Clifton. Yeah.
Yeah,
What's up,
Clifton,
William
right.
Eiler, 45, and Shaggy Do-Rye? Shaggy Do-Rye says he's a great character builder. He sure is a great character builder. I mean, that's the thing about Andy Kaufman and having Jim Carrey play Andy Kaufman. It's like we didn't have any doubt that he could. It was just that I feel like Jim Carrey's persona outshines the role, or at least it's almost as present. It's very present because what it was a tribute to Andy Kaufman, but it felt like sort of a showcase of Jim Carrey in a lot of ways, that movie in particular. And did you know who was up for that role and apparently has like a legendary audition tape?
No, who?
Edward Norton.
Really?
Edward
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I was actually working at Miramax when I was like doing an internship in when I was 4 years old in 2000, and it adds up, trust me. And they were saying at that place apparently the tape was going around, and they were like, "Oh yeah, you want to see Jim Norton auditioning for the Milos Forman role movie?" Man on the Moon, because it's legendary. And in retrospect, and during the time, I was like, yeah, that would have been a much more interesting to have a guy who's like a serious actor who kind of, even if he put on a little weight and like did some like little makeup adjustments, would resemble physically doing Andy Kaufman and during that movie. The one thing that I specifically remember Jim Carrey being hearing about this. It was like on Entertainment Tonight. That was the news magazine shows that I would watch as a kid. And they were like, today on the set of Milos Forman's Man on the Moon, the tribute to the Andy Kaufman legacy, starring Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey did another prank. Jim Carrey was now taken away in an ambulance the next day. That Jim Carrey has his own film crew with him and is filming a documentary while he's filming this movie. And the rest of the cast is getting fed up with Jim Carrey. And so Jim Carrey was trying to recreate Andy Kaufman as a person in a lot of ways on set by creating chaos. And then has since come out with that documentary.
You know, a lot of ways that these kind of, you know, and we mentioned the Truman Show and how his character changes throughout that movie. By the end of it, he's like, you know, you can almost see it mirrored in. Oh man, I keep losing you on Instagram.
No worries.
You see almost Jim Carrey's transformation from like goofball to like what he is now, which is like, you know, existentialist, I guess, or you know, yeah. And you know, the movies like that, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and that movie was, I think, just a great film. Like that movie, because I had been in a relationship for a very long time. You know, my wife and I just celebrated 23 years together. So like relationship awesome. Stuff. Thank you. Yes, we're very happy. But like seeing that, just you get this like really in-depth look at like intense relationships and codependency and stuff like that. So and I thought it was handled really well, and visually just, you know, you know, when he's in the scenes and it's all falling apart and it's just heartbreaking, gut-wrenching stuff. But really great movie just alone. And that was a movie where his performance is so subtle that like it's not Jim Carrey. It's just the guy. He's like this introvert to, you know, this timid character, and it was just the right amount, I think.
I will always maintain that is his best actor performance. Like as far as just being fully disappearing into a role where I was just fully invested in who he was, and it's not the typical Jim Carrey type of role where he's just over the top and doing all of this fun improvising. And it was at that moment, I think, or maybe the movie before, maybe Liar Liar or something, but this is what I meant was, I'd grown up watching Jim Carrey and loving him on In Living Color. I paid to see every single movie that came out throughout the entire 90s, and I wasn't aware of it. I was just like, and then I went and saw Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind by Michel Gondry, and it is a fantastical adventure through the world of dreams and the mind, and it's visually stunning and has a lot of good heart in it. Also, filmed a lot on Long Island, actually, in Westchester. So they go to Montauk and stuff. But
right, yeah, I think that got me too, is because I could see all these really familiar places too. The fashion that they're wearing, it really is kind of like, I guess it's a New York, you know, another movie that hit me that hard was Synecdoche. Charlie Kaufman. Mm-hmm. Another, well, that's upstate New York, but you know, it kind of has the same, I don't know, relatable dreariness,
Yeah.
metropolitan kind of look, like Christopher Nolan, but less Vancouver and and London and more like New York, New York. I
That
don't
is
know if that makes any
also
sense to anybody.
that is also another, yeah, Charlie Kaufman script, because Eternal Sunshine was written by Charlie Kaufman, and so
Right.
was Synecdoche, so was
Mhm.
Being John Malkovich, an adaptation, all fantastic, fantastical.
He's my favorite. He's my favorite writer.
He's so great
Love
because
him.
he uses the medium of writing to uh, just take the story where it can go
Mhm.
and needs to go sometimes, and maybe that doesn't conform to the bounds of reality in
Mhm.
his movies. So
I got I
it's
gotta
really
say his
great.
movie. I love his movie so much, but it's a bit like doing like an intense psychedelic or something. Where you get afraid of watching the next one. So I
Right.
saw Synecdoche, and I'm like, and I still have not seen Anomalisa because I don't want to like experience that. I've heard like things about it. I'm like, okay, I'll save that for when I'm like emotionally like strong enough to take that, because I know
I
he's gonna find those buttons to press or those strings to pull.
I feel like I did see it. I may have blocked it
That's
out.
with the puppets. It's
It
puppets.
is, yeah.
You know,
I remember.
it's the other movie with puppet sex.
It's besides Team
Team
America, World
America.
Police.
Yeah. It's a small list.
Oh my God, I laughed so hard throughout Team America. I could
Yeah.
not
Oh
stop
my
laughing.
God, I love that. It's another one of my top movies. That's one of the best, man. It's so quotable, such a great premise, and just like nails it. Taking
It is.
the Thunderbirds the aesthetic and then just parodying that in a very like relevant and only South Park can do it way. You
I
just
loved
get
it.
right to the heart of it. Like they're the best.
Classic. Jake A109 says, "Have you seen Kidding?" Isn't that his show? Jim
Yeah,
Carrey show.
I started watching it a little bit. I haven't I didn't delve into it, but I know he's a puppet. He's like a children's show host, right?
Yeah, I hear it's good. I hear good things. I'll definitely watch it at some point. I did try watching Jim Carrey's documentary, and I had problems with it. I couldn't finish it.
Where he's talking about his art. Yeah, yeah, I think I started watching it too, and I was just mostly jealous of the fact that he had this huge art studio and just could pour gallons of paint on canvases. I'm like, I would love to have that one day. He's
Yes.
he's like he's got this 20-foot canvas and he's like laying on boards over it, just doing whatever, and the
Just
result
those
looks like
supplies alone are like
right.
$10,000. It's insane.
And I hate to be a hater artist, but when he first started making it, I was like, ugh, I don't really like this. But I feel like, if you follow him on Twitter, I feel like he's getting better and better. So, but who am
He's
I
a,
to judge?
he's a decent visual artist, and he's got a passion for it. And I think if you've got a passion for it and you practice diligently, you can improve and become
Absolutely.
serviceable. And I think he is well on his way. Um, Speaking of artists who we know in one genre being really good at painting,
Hmm.
John Cougar Mellencamp, excellent
Really,
painter, excellent
really,
painter. Google it; it's pretty amazing. Actually, he's
wow.
he's got his own distinct style, and it's quite good. Also, Tony Bennett is a really good painter as well. The problem I had with Jim Carrey's documentary, though, was just there's something about how I almost feel it was morely that particular documentary was more so about him becoming Andy Kaufman 20 years ago, and him talking about that whole process. And because I remembered hearing the reports of how difficult he was to work with on the set, and then watching him describe it as I was being possessed by Andy Kaufman, I was like, well, good. I feel like if this kind of like magical transformation he uh, underwent, that's cool. However, I feel like as someone who works on set, I think I'm just a little bit biased by someone being difficult and making the day rough.
I know exactly what you mean.
You know what I mean?
You're holding everybody up. It's like, listen, everybody just wants to go home. We don't want
Yeah,
to be a part of your social experiment or whatever.
exactly. It's like you're giving us a weird day, but I think he's put enough distance between that time of causing all of that ire, the annoyance has worn off by any of the crew members or whatever. Milos Forman, who I think recently died, was just like, Jim's just gonna do his thing, and I don't know how to, and he would call Jim Carrey crying and be like, Jim, just please show up on Monday as Jim. I need Jim to be in this movie. Stop being Tony Clifton. Stop being Andy Kaufman for just a minute. I'm pleading with him.
Yeah, I think so. You know, at some point, some people, you know, they you know, he, in order to get to wherever he needed to be his characters, there was a sort of disregard for everybody around him, and he kept on pushing that boundary to the point of like, but you know, and getting back to that, his life mirroring what's going on. You know, when you look at the relationship he had, you know, and the most tragic one I think is the one of his ex-girlfriends committed suicide at some point.
Yes. Yeah.
And you know that, and getting back to this idea of sense of self, you know, there's a great scene in one of my other new favorite comedic movies of all time, Tropic Thunder. The whole idea of losing sense of identity, or characters getting lost in themselves, and they kind of mess with it. But that kind of stuff does happen, and you know, it makes me think of the Buddhist idea of sense of self and the identity being this thing we erect as part of, you know, like to separate ourselves from the other people in our lives. You know, yeah, we're unique, we go through our lives, but there's also, we have a favorite color, we, you know, that kind of stuff to help us sort of. So when I think an actor gets in the process of starting to remove their identity or replace it, or after a while they start going, well, who am I again? What happened is the real me?
Yeah.
And he kind of hit that wall, I think, in real life. Yeah. And which is good and bad, you know, because it also ties in this loss of sense of self, and this plays very much into his personality, is also a sign of a narcissistic wound. So a person who, for whatever reason, maybe a rough childhood, never gets the kind of attention he needs, he's going to go to the next level to try to get it, and keep trying to get high on that drug, partially because there's no sense of self, no clear sense of self that it developed from mirroring his parent, for instance. So like, then it's like he's back and forth between insecure and grandiose to try to measure where he fits and all that. And I think a lot of people are dealing with that, especially a culture that creates narcissists. Look at our president is a huge narcissist. Yeah. So like, you know, he's one of those people who's you know, the examples of that, you know, because he was the $20 million guy, you know, so it does something to you. But you know, the fact that he's like trying to spend these last, you know, or this part of his life, or you know, his autumn years, kind of sifting through that, and I don't know how well he's doing at it, you know. Like it's hard to judge a person from this perspective, you know. But we can't relate with it. I don't think any of us that are listening can possibly relate, being that famous. And
yeah, he's a unique experience. He has been basically he's been left to his own devices and been rewarded greatly for it. They're like, do whatever you do, here's $20 million, just keep. And so I think he definitely struggles with that. Some of the recent interviews I've seen with him, it's just like he's trying so hard to humble himself in a life in which he's been rewarded for jackassery. So like everything he's done, they're like, you're the greatest at it, you're the greatest. And then now he's sort of, it's almost like he tries extra hard to be like, he's a complicated dude. He's a complicated dude for sure. Jen the Fierce says the Truman Show is so good. I agree. And the Cable Guy controversial.
Oh yeah, Cable Guy. I loved that movie. I loved it instantly. I saw it in the theaters, and it was weird to see people like not like it, because Ben Stiller also directed that, and I thought he did. Yeah. I thought it was great. It just like
the musical,
every beat of it, the music, the soundtrack was great. Like I just love that movie, and love that character is one of a kind too. But I guess it's just too dark or too weird for people. He's too uncomfortable a character, you know.
Yeah, you know, and that's the thing about acting. You got to create a character, and Jim Carrey really created a character who was very real. But yeah, and Ben Stiller's comedy is also known for being slightly uncomfortable, or it tries to push that boundary of discomfort constantly. Ever since Something About Mary, And then he, ever since the Ben Stiller show, there was always that kind of humor. And then you've got Meet the Parents and all that, which is just based on him constantly being grotesquely embarrassed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Became Polly, all of those things.
It's just skin, Steven.
I do remember leaving the Cable Guy, and that was, again, I saw every movie by Jim Carrey in the theater. Like I was saying before, it took me until Eternal Sunshine to go, wait, I'm a Jim Carrey fan. I am empirically a Jim Carrey fan because I cannot deny that I've paid to see every one of his movies. But leaving the theater after the Cable Guy, I remember feeling just weird for like a day. I remember it being funny, but also very dark and scary in a lot of ways. Because I feel like there are people who try to win our affection like that.
Sorry about that.
No, go ahead.
I was a little bit more gothy, so for me, it's like being uncomfortable or getting into content that makes you uncomfortable was like my thing at that point. Yeah. It's like yes, let's live in it. But no, I don't know. It's one of those cult movies, so it's I'm fine with it being a cult movie. Sometimes it's not meant for everyone at that time. Maybe one day it'll be like solidified, but who knows? I feel like I've fallen off of Jim Carrey though, like shortly around that era, like not Cable Guy, but some of the later ones we mentioned. Like I didn't see Kidding, and I haven't seen any of his latest other than Sonic. I saw his bit in Sonic.
I heard Sonic was good. I haven't seen that yet. I'm actually really excited to see. He's in like classic Jim Carrey form. Right.
Yeah, that's the thing is. And frankly, I wanted to see more of him, and I didn't really care about the rest of the movie as much. But it was like, what you'd expect. But the opportunity to see him in that kind of form again was nice, and have these like, and he's not over the top, but he has like a couple of good moments, and I'm eager to see what they do in a sequel. But I'd like to see. I don't know. At this point, I'm getting to the age where I'm gonna have kids soon, so I'm looking forward to be able to introduce the old Jim Carrey stuff. So, Jim Carrey, if he wants to rest, if you're watching this, Jim Carrey, if you want to rest, you can rest. It's okay. You don't have to keep making like extreme comedy things. I know you're getting tired, but I'm looking forward to like passing on like the stupidity of that, and there's a sort of comedy history, that's happened. There's the early sort of vaudevillian. There's the joke tellers. Take my wife, and then there's the edgy comedians. Carlin is one of my favorites.
Great.
And certainly in the '90s, there was a lot of that kind of heady stuff. Bill Hicks, that kind of stuff. But this kind of his sort of physical comedy, I think, is just always going to be around and always and timeless and speaks across. I'm sure there's plenty of Jim Carrey fans in India and Russia and wherever.
That's the thing. He can break down that language barrier with his physical comedy. Yeah,
exactly. That's one thing that the headiest of comedians can't do, is that a lot of times the thing that's so unique about your joke is that it's buried deep within your culture, which is great if you're speaking to your audience, but if you're not, then, and not to say that more universal comedy is better, but like this is a sort of like non-linguistic form of comedy, which I think, definitely will always have a place. So, I don't know. I'm looking to see who the next physical comedian person is. Is there someone? Is that a thing anymore? Is physical comedy like a thing anymore?
I think Melissa McCarthy is taking up a lot of that mantle.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's really good at that. And I lost you again on. Yeah, here we go. And who else? Guys out there, Jen, the Savage Con, Shaggy Doo-Rah, Kyle Black. You guys have any favorite physical comedians that you would say maybe are the next upcoming? I feel like Jim Carrey still occupies the Jim Carrey space. You know what I mean? I don't know if
that's true.
there's anyone.
There were moments like Chris Tucker and
yeah,
in The Fifth Element, Ruby Rod. That's some Jim Carrey level stuff.
it is. I notoriously despise that movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, we gotta have a talk about that.
Everybody wants to try to convert me to a like.
I'm not gonna try to convert you. I just want to hear what your criticisms are. I'm interested.
I might patch you in with a friend of mine on another episode where everybody but me loves that movie. I decidedly dislike that movie.
I saw this video essay about a trope that's a fine example of. The trope is called Born Sexy Yesterday, and it's the idea of a female lead character who's sexualized but still has the mentality of a child. And then you see that in like Tron, the Tron Legacy, and Lilu in particular is the perfect example of that. So, and it's I think a negative association. It's sort of like this, and it created a whole. There was a series of these characters, and watch this video, Born Sexy Yesterday, if you're interested in this topic. But I think it really does that is I think my major criticism of it. But I'm sure you have like technical or story.
I almost feel like on every level I hate that movie. I don't know what it is, but I legitimately did a full commentary on Aristotle, fullthrottle.com it's a commentary track, so you guys can start watching it when me and my friends start watching it, and you can hear him defending the movie and me criticizing the movie the whole time. Like, he's definitely promoting and highlighting all of the things he loves about it, and I am like also taking it apart. But I do want to do a follow-up on that, because that was like 2 or 3 years ago, and he's still championing The Fifth Element, and I'm just like, Luke Perry. What? I mean, I love Luke Perry, but why is he like excavating a pyramid? I can't. There's no dust. There's 10,000 like
light.
I'm like 3 minutes into the movie, and they're in a well-lit pyramid with no dust covering anything. I'm just like, my suspension of disbelief cannot kick in yet.
These are my bullet points. Aziz, light. Cover my man. I ain't got no fire. Come on, hey man, yeah. Come on, there's like negative. I am a meat popsicle. There's like so many great lines in that movie. That's my defense of it. Because I always fall back on a movie like, because I hate technically dismantling movies, because there are movies that are so bad on every level that I still really like, because of some one little thing that makes it, pops it up to 11 where everything else is like 2, and it's almost on par with something where everything is across the board 5 or whatever. It's not a 10 across the board, but like, I'm getting is like, it's there's some element of it that is just, maybe it's the fifth element.
Yeah, that is it's Fifth Element. maybe it's Tiny Lister being the president of space. Maybe, but there's so many. I mean, I love Gary Oldman. I mean, I know this is a show about Jim Carrey, and we'll get back to Jim Carrey, but I love Gary Oldman so much. I hate to see him reduced to the Fifth Element. You know what it is? It's not that I dislike the Fifth Element so much. I just dislike Luc Besson so much. Everything that he has done has like offended me deeply in some like visceral way, and maybe it's inexplicable, but there are just so many things he does in his movies that they sour the whole movie for me. Like, for instance, taking the great Ian Holm and have him like be a bumbling idiot, like I'm just like inexplicably dumb, but also a genius, but also dumb. I just can't. I don't know.
No, I hear you. There's a lot in there, But again, to take it back to the original point, I think Ruby Rod is just a character for the ages. It's like this, futures eccentrics, radio show host. Pop, 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 pop. It must pop, 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 pop. It's gonna be green, green, green. It's like all the catchphrases are there.
But timeless. Now for me, that's where the movie starts to go like fully downhill, because he's to me I love Chris Tucker. Give me Rush Hour all day. Give me even Silver Linings Playbook. I liked him in that. I'm watching this movie, and it's his voice, just the pitch at which he hits is nails on a chalkboard, and it's constant.
Sure.
It's just
Sure. Yeah, like why is he even a radio host?
And I feel like there's so many like Michael Jackson, like Luc Besson. I picture the French director Luc Besson being like, this is going to be like Michael Jackson. Be like Michael Jackson. I'm going to shoot this like Michael Jackson.
He's like more like Prince. He's like Prince.
Yeah, or Prince or whoever.
It was, for me, it was refreshing to see Chris Tucker like that, because I'm like, oh my God, he's like leaning into this. He's like full on like eccentric, and the hairstyles and everything. His entourage is the best part of that, because they're always like just oh Ruby, like they're just hilarious. But I mean, we should probably stop talking about this because it'll go.
I know, but because I feel like for every point people love it, for some reason I don't like it. Like that scene where they introduce him, it's just like cut so quickly. It's almost as bad as Liam Neeson in Taken 2 or whatever it was. Lost you again on Insta. I don't know if maybe you're
I think
in low.
my phone just goes quiet, and then it's I gotta turn off the sleep button or whatever.
Sleep, or if it's in low power mode. She's the Man fine. Was so funny, says Jen the Fierce. Let me Google this man. Wait, Shy, you don't know? Oh wait. He voiced the character of my favorite video game, so I love Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog so hard. Oh yeah, Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog with NPH, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's cool. That was an interesting experiment, the Dr. Horrible sing-along blog.
Yeah.
One of the first times like a celebrity participated in internet culture, or like now we've got like Jablinski Games and stuff like that, and Will Smith being a YouTuber. We've just come so long. Someone said they don't like Firefly.
Yeah, that's a on the same level kind of take, a bold stance.
Yeah, fair enough. But that's what we love here on Aristotle Full Throttle. Differences in opinion, and we enjoy all of them.
My nickname is Sacred Cow Slaughterhouse, so I'm down with whatever hero you want to take down, effigy you want to burn. Let's do it. Yeah. Let's take the biggest ones too.
Exactly.
Gone with the Wind. Fuck Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, Gone with the Wind. I recently rewatched so many scenes from that movie.
It's beautiful.
It's a beautifully shot film. Gone with the Wind, one of the greatest cinematography, like just groundbreaking. Yet Scarlett O'Hara, I mean, toss her in the trash. She just gets on my nerves so much.
Well, she's supposed to be an annoying character. She's like debutante, or
And Rhett Butler is such a chauvinistic pig. It's amazing.
That's that heroic character, like John Wayne type. There's something to be said about that. The psychology of that guy too. I don't remember where I read this, but I was reading about how like that it's kind of part of what's wrong with American culture is this idea that like one of the male American heroes is a guy like John Wayne, who seems on the surface to be like untouchable or like stoic, but really he's a man who's experienced a lot of trauma and has just pushed it deep down, and all it takes is just one person to come over and push him the wrong way or say the wrong thing, and then he explodes in like these moments of super arrogance or aggressive or dominance or whatever.
Or throws Scarlett O'Hara down a staircase.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Same sort of like, whoa, this is definitely patriarchy level shit.
Yeah, and it's like that scene in that movie too is really dark because she kind of comes at him and he grabs her and then she ends up falling down the stairs and losing her baby, which is just like, good golly, don't give people any ideas here, please. Terrible movie.
And she's annoying, but she's kind of like links to the modern day concept of Karen, because that's a Southern belle, right? That's the archetype of a Southern belle, and it's part of the patriarchy. You're supposed to have, that's your role, is you're the matriarch in the patriarchy. So you're like the household. So one thing that Southern belle would do, or the matriarch of the family, was manage the slaves. That was one of her jobs. So like from that comes out this, like, you could see in Scarlett's life, her life of trying to be groomed into that kind of lifestyle, and then she becomes independent. So on the one hand, here's a new take on this. She's like, I don't need some man or whatever, but she also becomes very angry and cold and sort of. And in the end, what does she do? She's like, I'll never give up trying to get you back. It's like
tomorrow
it's a
is
problematic
another day.
character, problematic character for sure.
Yeah, there's many layers to
it's an American archetype for sure.
It really is. It's like she's very character trait, yet at the same time, there are a lot of like stereotypes in which she's like placing herself in and being boxed into by the story, by the writing, and it's a complicated flick. Every movie though is going to be complicated in 100 years, I think. Everything we do.
The farther you get away from it, the more complicated it becomes. Like Birth of a Nation, I think we talked about last time. But let's bring it back to Jim Carrey.
I wanted to do that
because the timeline are we?
I was gonna say we cannot continue this conversation about Jim Carrey without mentioning what the Savage Khan brought up. How does everyone feel about Batman Forever? Now that was a moment. That was a moment for Jim Carrey.
The Savage Khan, by the way, is my wife Sabrina. So if anyone wants to say Sabrina Khan, she's a wonderful.
I was guessing that.
she's the Savage one. No, actually that's my nickname that she stole. She stole my nickname.
She logged in under your account in life.
But I can hear that. Good reasons to dislike that movie, but as a Jim Carrey fan, I was there for it, and I loved his performance. It was over the top. It was ridiculous. It was corny, but that's what I signed up for. So yeah, like I'm all for that, just for his performance.
Contextually, though, now that's like the mid '90s, I guess. It's like 93, 94 or something. So Jim Carrey had been making a name for himself, being the center of attention for his movies, the focal point. I don't know if he had done Dumb and Dumber by that, probably, because he had been like such a mega star.
Yeah, I think this is like 97 or something.
Oh yeah, so there you go. That's a lot later than I thought. And he was a huge get for a movie like that. He was probably the biggest selling point for Batman Forever, because I remember that's like, wow, they're going to have Jim Carrey as the Riddler because they couldn't get Robin Williams.
Right.
Which, what do you think about that? I would have imagined, and I feel like it would have been in the consciousness of most people that Robin Williams would have been a great Riddler, because we'd seen Jack Nicholson pull off the Joker, serious actor, become such a wacky character. Oh, the Instagram has ended. I forgot to let the folks on Instagram know that they can continue on here, but that's all good. We're all here still. So you said Jack Nicholson play the Joker, and now you're like, okay, well, this is serious. And I know that I think there were a couple people. I think Robin Williams was courted to be the Joker originally, but then they were like, well, that was such a success to try to like mash up a serious, famous, huge actor to put into a comic book movie. Let's try to sell it again to Robin Williams years later. But I think for some reason he didn't go for it, and Jim Carrey then had to sort of step into the shoes, or at least in a lot of ways the persona of Robin Williams as the Riddler. I thought he definitely brought his own thing to it, but I think there was an expectation of Jim Carrey to perform in a very improvisational way that Robin Williams may have brought to the role. And for me, it's a mixed bag. I like Jim Carrey, yet with Joel Schumacher involved in the context of a Batman movie as a role that wasn't really originally offered to him. There's like a lot of things that fight against it.
It's more problematic because at that point, Batman was super popular. Batman Returns was still a huge success, and Batman the Animated Series was a big success. And the Riddler was shown. Batman the Animated Series took a lot of notes from the Tim Burton movies and how everybody sort of looked and acted up until Penguin and Catwoman, and then Riddler and all the other sort of rogues gallery, they had to sort of figure it out. So their personification of the Riddler was this sort of limey, very proper and reserved character who occasionally lost his or got frustrated, and that was his characterization. So to see then Jim Carrey go, well, I'm Jim Carreying it. It could be like, I could see how that would be like piss off a lot of people, because he's not the Joker. He's not this over the top character. He's his thing is Riddler. So I'm actually happy to see this new take on Riddler that they're going to do with the Batman. I'm sure already it looks way better as a tribute to the character. But again, like I treat, I'm not a fanboy per se, so I don't have any sort of sacred cows when it comes to these things. I like seeing my favorite heroes get completely re-envisioned, or my favorite villains, whatever, But as long as the archetypical or the character balance in the story itself, if you're going to change the Joker, then you got to change Batman a little bit, so the dichotomy works out, or at least tell me what the new dichotomy is. So, especially with these established characters, it's like they exist like this for a reason. So, and they're part of a pantheon, right? For a reason. This guy is he doesn't need to be zany. That's not his character. He's here is where his intelligence is. So for Jim Carrey to play it that way, it's a mix. It's a confusing character too, because it's part introvert and part extrovert. So it's conflicting characters, because here you have this guy who's keeping to himself. He's a nerd. He's whatever. He's trying to come out of his shell. And I think Jim Carrey's trying to play it that way. He's like, oh, this person is like having a dual role. He's opposite Two-Face, so maybe they're both having this duality thing going on. And then his ego just basically takes over. So with that other role with him, just kind of. But again, it doesn't work. It doesn't fit within the concept. And again, we're talking about a kids movie, which made to ultimately sell Happy Meals and toys and shit. So whatever. Like it's always funny to try to put these sort of Greco-Roman ideals to these like superhero movies. Like, yeah, it's there on one level, but on the other level, it's there to sell toys.
But I think it's a fair comparison though, because the dynamics that are created between these enduring characters throughout the last 70 years or so, however many years it's been since the inception of Batman, they stick around for a reason, and the dynamics keep getting honed over time. Particularly, like you mentioned the relationship between Batman and the Joker, and that I think in The Dark Knight is expertly the Batman, the Joker, and Two-Face being three sides of the dance. Like they're all balanced in that movie so well. But in Batman Forever, you've got it's a hodgepodge. You've got the introduction of Robin. You've got Two-Face. You've got Jim Carrey as the Riddler, and Jim Carrey is over the top. He's larger than life to begin with, and you're cramming him into this group of people that are all larger than life characters. So I feel like he did criticism also for Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face in that, because he literally did not. He was just like, "How much are you paying me?"
Yeah, he's totally phoning that role in. Like, yeah, I'm Two-Face, whatever.
You're like, so Two-Face, all he does is scream and laugh. Like,
and you can see like the scenes they're together. You could tell he just hates him. He just hates Jim Carrey.
Yes, that's true.
He's just like, shut the fuck up, dude.
He hates. Yeah, that's actually true. It has since come out that Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey did not like Jim Carrey at all, and it's very evident. But Tommy Lee Jones, Tommy Lee Jones's idea of the character of Two-Face is just, oh, so you get a serious actor to play a comic book character? I'm just gonna laugh and shoot my gun off, and like that's it. Yeah, there's no dynamic to it.
That's true. There's no respect for it. There's no attempt to even try it. But at that point, the marketing had gone. We're talking about, we mentioned this last time, Robot Spider guy. That's the producer they're dealing with. The guy who behind the robot spiders.
John Peters.
Then Superman Returns and whatnot. That's what you're dealing with.
Later, Shy. Shy says she's got to bounce, but thank you for popping in, Shy. Always good to see you. I do want to talk a little bit more about Batman, if you just
sure. Yeah, I'm super into that topic.
I feel like, I mean, Jim Carrey. Just to put a cap on the Jim Carrey discussion, the guy's a man for the ages. He was ahead of his time. I really feel like the just watching his movies in the 90s, it was a gift to be able to witness that and just kind of see what was happening, enjoying what was happening, negative, being like, wait a second, I really laughed the whole time and was amazed at his physicality, yet the critics are saying this isn't acting. And I mean,
they don't like the idea of it, you know. It's like, this is not, you know, this is cheating.
Try not to laugh, though.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a man eat his own head? Like, what?
Maybe we're just easy. I don't know. Maybe we're just easy marks for that.
And I'm fine with that. But
Batman, yes.
Robert Pattinson. I saw this trailer for The Batman, and now this is a fun conversation. I know Angie loves DC, and I've been watching that trailer over and over again, and just completely mesmerized by it. And they've only shot 25% of this movie, which is shocking. But the idea of the Riddler in this being a serial killing, like Zodiac killer, is so compelling. It's so in Seven, it's kind of like very real life. Seven was, you know, kind of based on that Zodiac situation, and it
actually
like Seven.
That scene in particular reminds me of the scene in Seven with the Greed's death, where the lawyers killed
Pound of Flesh.
Greed is it's very similar kind of scenario and setup, but you know, I love that they're doing that they're going back crime, like detective story, like, and the way and his interaction with the cops, like just from the footage alone, you're seeing like a different relationship with the cops. Well, not completely different. I mean, he's always been shot at by the cops, but especially in times like this, you know, it's questionable what they're going to do with this and like how they're going to portray it. You know, it makes me like think of the deeper ramifications of what the relationship Batman has with law enforcement and what he means to law enforcement and officials too. I'd be interested in hearing cops talk about Batman, because you know he goes to some pretty extreme. I mean, look in that trailer alone. He beats the shit out of the dude, and everyone is like, "Yeah, I'm there for it."
Yeah,
but like,
exactly.
what does that mean? Like, we want justice. We want justice. We hate that base painted asshole. But there are plenty of people in this country right now who see that face painted asshole in that trailer, and they think that's what's going on in Black Lives Matter or in Portland right now. So it's super problematic. Especially in Joker too, this Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix. Same idea as like he's there, he's the face of the rebellion in the streets on top of a police car. And even the Batman movies going back, you know, Bane and the showdown with the cops in the end of Dark Knight Rises. So I'm interested to see what they do with this. And now that they have the opportunity, because they've paused filming, they could do some changes if they need to sort of express the all cops are bastards, even if they just address it in some small way. It doesn't have to change the story fundamentally, but I feel like it has to pick up from the times a little bit.
It needs to keep its finger on that pulse. It needs to kind of reflect. Like, I mean, if it's wise, I think it's a good time for movies to take this time and rewrite and re-edit and hone what they want to do. I know that Ghostbusters was supposed to come out this year, but now they're pushing it back to next year, which gave Jason Reitman the time to re-edit. He's like, I'm recutting this movie because I'm seeing it in different ways now, which I don't know. It could be a good thing, or it could be like overcooked. So, the Batman, I think they can. Well, I think it's really important now how we view law enforcement in films going forward. And notice how most TV shows are like cop procedurals, and most TV shows were always on the cop side, and you'll see cops wanting to go around getting a warrant to do an arrest. And now this idea that Batman is working with the cops to try to like Batman works in a gray area. So
right. And especially with all these militiamen out there who are technically vigilantes, And you know, but then you have the Antifa dressing all up in black, if Antifa even exists. But like, you know, there's definitely black bloc anarchists who dressed all in black. And again, this idea of justice. Everyone has their idea of what justice is. And I feel like our superhero stories, it's comically and it's comically absurd who the villains are. You know, Ultron, for instance. You know, there's a bad guy is, you know, badly written bad guy is just pure evil. He has no motive other than just to fuck shit up. I like, and you know, to some extent you could say that's the Joker, but whatever. But I think even he has trauma that he's working on, or he has a point to prove ultimately, as part of like on, you know, getting his Glasgow smile as a child, for instance. You know, so there it comes from somewhere. So and that gives it a human side to it. It's not just some supernatural thing. And I feel like the later DC EU, like Batman versus Superman, and really kind of played with this a lot. And then Batman versus Superman gets a lot of shit, but I really liked it, especially the extended cut, specifically because of how they dealt with things like global supremacy, having the biggest military in the world, how the role the CIA plays in foreign intervention. You know, there's a lot cut out from the first scene in Batman vs Superman that has to do with the CIA bombing the bad guys and Superman getting involved. So that plays into the role. And then you had the witness who talks about it was Superman who killed my family. It turns out she's a paid informant by the government. So again, and why does this stuff get edited out? It's a good question. You know, running time is the ultimate answer. But the truth of the matter is, whenever you see these movies with like tanks and military helicopters and machine guns and all that stuff, it's because they made a deal with the military, usually, like Transformers or whatever. They make a deal with the military so that the military can go, okay, you can use our stuff, but we get final say on the cut. And that happens. That's a real thing. That's not conspiracy or anything. So the question is when you have a storyline that, and just bringing it back to what you mentioned about cops and law enforcement, is they are, and this goes for doctors as well too, is our perception of them is largely formed by movies and by TV shows and such. It's when the character that we identify with, the lead character, is going to the doctor, or is getting a cancer diagnosis, or is going to, or calling the police, or is, you know, there's a suspect, or, you know, criminal or whatever. All this stuff is kind of programming us to assume a certain understanding about how the world works. And one of those assumptions is that law enforcement is there to protect us. It's necessary. And that there's a bad guy there that we need to be protected from. And it's not, it's, you know, we can debate till the end of time whether, well, that stuff is true, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, it's formed. When we join into this universe, you know, when we get born into the society, we are just accepting or adapting to what's here. We didn't vote to decide whether it's ideal or not. So, but what you do in a sense is, as we move forward in time, this is what I think a lot of people forget when they're seeing all this crazy shit that's going on, is what role do you play? You know, what do you think and feel, you know? And this tendency to want to like, just fucking hands in the air about it, or go full force into whatever side you're at. But like, you know, you're playing a role. You're playing a role. You're looking at the past. You're considering your present, and you're considering your future. And it's all happening now. You know, it's easy to look back and say, well, things are like this. Cops are there to protect us. And it's like, well, we're always recontextualizing the past. We're always learning more about each other and ourselves, and then looking back and going, are these movies right? Are these personifications? Are these characterizations? Are they accurate? Are they realistic? Or are they...
Scarlett O'Hara, is she a strong woman or an annoying woman?
Yeah, and you know, none of it is, I think, really wrong. You know, and I wouldn't censor sort of things, but I think after you learn a certain lesson, I don't know if it's, as a culture, it pays to go back and, you know, be the edgelord of like retreading that territory if there isn't something to learn from it. What I mean specifically is like, a lot of times, you know, there's been a regress of like, alt-right, if you want, of ideas that have like long since, you know, racism, for instance. We've gotten to a point where we know that like racism is a manufactured idea. It's a eugenicist creation, but there are still plenty of people who are still seeing through the racial filter. So,
of race being like an actual dividing thing,
right.
like this, like the idea that you can divide humans up into
Right.
different categories,
Right, by
is
skin
a
color,
construct.
arbitrary
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Absolutely,
Like these
construct.
are very arbitrary. Like because we're not like, you know, that is an arbitrary way to divide humans up. All of the same species, you're like, okay, well, these people have this color eyes or this color skin, so therefore they're different. It's like you're, and I mean, we can go on and on about the construct of
Yeah, I think we
race.
talked about this last time too.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah,
Well,
and
yeah.
and the
You look at,
opposition is always like, the all lives matter people are always like, oh, there are no, yeah, I agree with you, but we're dealing with racism right now, which is a real thing. Racism
yeah,
still exists, and that means that there are still people who think that races exist, So, and that's what we're dealing with is people are like, black people do this, It's like,
yeah,
well, and sure enough, there's plenty of that on the other side. White people do this, but it's always just shorthand for cultural or subcultures. You're talking about a particular subculture, and when we're getting at these kind of things like law enforcement, all this stuff, I think the root of it ends up being poverty and tackling social inequality,
yeah.
and that's our era right now. That's what we're going to be, and hopefully we won't need the police. When we tackle this problem of private property, for instance, ride sharing is a way of us tackling that problem. How many people are going to keep buying cars and polluting when we can only use the cars that are necessary to use? It's like, not to say that we have to everyone stop buying a car. There has to be a rule now, but you can see a sort of slow trend, or the electric vehicle thing. Just slow movement. And that means that the gas guzzler of the past and the people who love that, the people who are driving around their Hummers in their residential neighborhoods, they're going to be the dinosaur in this situation.
Yeah.
We just
Wrong
have
side
to
of history. They'll fade. And I remember watching the RNC last week, and they were saying something about the Democrats. They don't want you like they want. What's going to happen when you call 911 and no one shows up? And I'm like, no, you're going to call 911, and depending on the situation, a caseworker might show up, or this person might show. It's like they want people to think that the idea of defunding the police or changing the concept of community, at least, and like how to address the community issues.
Mm-hmm.
That's all that needs to change right now, because if you send someone with a gun to a situation, someone might get shot, even if there's no reason for anyone to get shot. So, there's just it's a very complicated issue that that Batman has to handle. We need to get a real Batman to come in.
Well, in parenting, there was a trend. I don't know when it started or when it ended, but maybe it ended in the 90s. But there was a trend where spanking was seen as a way to discipline your child, and it's since been, by parenting experts, been deemed like just basically abuse. And it's part of that larger thing of like, can we use diplomacy? Diplomacy is all dependent on how good of a communicator you are. So, in the case of discipline or punishment and all like that, diplomacy is up to the discipliner. That means that the person who is using physical harm as their solution to, someone who's not listening to them, they need to do better in learning how to talk to people and learning how to empathize with people.
Right.
And that's what cops, instead of being these, military aggressive, jujitsu moves, knee on the neck, sort of like disregard. It's efficient. Yeah, I'm sure it's really efficient, but it dehumanizes people, and nobody wants other people to be dehumanized. It's already dehumanizing to have to pay with a fake $20 bill because you're fucking poor as shit. Like you're already been dehumanized your whole life. But to then have someone have no compassion on you and just treat you like some sort of trash that's getting picked up, that's what needs to change,
Yeah.
But it will. I have faith it will, But Batman will change with it.
Yeah.
Will we see the tender, loving Batman?
I wonder if they'll re-edit the scene where Batman takes down that thug and just says, You know, like they say, "Hey, who are you supposed to be?" And then Batman just walks over. "Hi guys, I know I'm dressed funny. And I have a cape. I would just like to talk to
Can we
you
have a
guys."
group chat right now? Can we
Yeah.
wrap a bit, guys? Can we just sit down and talk
Yeah.
about God and life?
I understand Gotham is going through a lot of stuff, and you've turned to crime to help sustain your lives, but I have a better way for you: the
You
Book of
see
Mormon and Latter-day Saints.
the rub here. This is the problem. It's like that's who he is. But interesting, the Batman in mind, like I'm interested in seeing this now Flash movie where it's going to have multiple Batmans in it, because maybe
Yeah.
they'll get the idea of seeing the more. We do see the more brutal Batman, but I wonder if we'll see the gentler, kinder Batman.
They've got to throw in like a couple extra Batmans in there, along with the Michael Keaton and the Batflex in the Flash
Yeah.
Point movie or whatever, because that they just have to. Maybe they'll get Kevin Conroy is his name.
Yeah, the anime Batman.
Yeah.
It's like a cartoon. He's like Captain America Batman.
Yeah, they end up in the cartoon universe. I wouldn't be mad at that.
The Batman who doesn't use guns, for instance, like that's actually a huge freaking point, actually, because
Yeah.
that Batman was always hardline no guns. I don't know
Unless
when
it's on
that
his
changed.
Well, I mean, I always thought of that too, but the Batwing and the Batmobile both have massive guns on them. They're like, and you're like, oh yeah, that's cool. But wait, he doesn't use handguns.
Yeah, well, and the first Batman movie, doesn't he like blow up the whole Axis chemical plant with people in it?
Which in a very
like
slick way too. It's like that little bomb comes out. Dink.
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah, that's one of the best scenes. But yeah, no, it's super problematic. But like I think for me in the comics, it was when I think he used a gun when he finally confronted his parents' killer in the comics. There was I don't remember exactly which story, but I know in the story, like he faces someone who's like has hooks for hands, and they sort of like the Mask of the Phantasm animated movie. But I remember they like this character like puts an X on his chest. But in that story, he like at the end he's like he has the option, and it's a sort of Seven moment, And in the Seven book, he doesn't kill, and but in the movie they just had to do it. They just couldn't. The audience would want it. I think it was Brad Pitt who was like, no, you have to do this. But at the same thing, it's like Batman just ends up killing the guy. He's like, fuck this, fuck justice. But I think that's a turning point too, and culturally, we can't. I don't know. I don't know if that was forced upon us, or if it was an era where we have been, or are going through, where it wasn't about being Mr. Nice Guy or Captain America or Superman. It's about doing what needs to be done, and it's super problematic.
Yeah, and Batman's all about that. Batman will always do what needs to be done, and
the unethical, the gray area. He should be gray, gray man.
That's true, and I think maybe the new Batman movie is gonna. I heard it's gonna lean into his detective work, and it's gonna be a mystery, which I'm very excited about because he is the world's greatest detective. And Angie said that it changed in the mid '80s, I guess, whether or not to use guns.
Yeah, you could say Frank Miller had a lot to do with that too. And he's a sort of problematic writer too, politically. When you look at his political, I don't know what he is these days, but I think it's with Sin City especially, just sort of a cynical outlook, going in there, and a sort of exploitative look at that violence and seediness and underbelly kind of stuff, and it was in a lot of ways when you look at the 80s, it's like we are getting to that, Plus people are doing a lot of coke, and I think the coke is like coke. I think cocaine is kind of like to blame for a lot of what's going on in the 80s and 90s. Maybe Jim Carrey. Maybe to bring it back to Jim Carrey. I don't want to accuse him of anything, but he's got a lot of energy.
He does seem to have superhuman energy, that guy. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested in the new Batman. I'm a big fan of Jim Carrey's legacy, and I do want to watch Sonic the Hedgehog just because of Jim Carrey. That's like the major selling point for me on that. And there's a little bit of chatter here in the chat about the relationship between the Joker and Batman, and that's very true. Joker and Batman are two sides of the same coin, chaos and order. Like Joker just wants to see the world burn, from what the Nolan verse is really emphasized, and Batman is just trying to clean up the streets. And
interestingly enough, if you look at the origin of Batman, and it's based on a pulp novel called The Bat, and The Bat was based on another French pulp novel, early 1900s, and that character was sort of like a mixture of Batman and the Joker. And you'll even see, like, in the first appearances of this character, he's a vigilante going after corrupt millionaires or corrupt bankers specifically. That's who he's going after. He was like, this is France. It reeks of the revolution a bit. So he's going after, I forget this hero's name, and I'm sorry I can't say it, but it was sort of based on the Shadow in that kind of era of, like, here's a person who has a lot of money, has like a secret lair, has all these weird cool gadgets, goes out at night, and is and in particular he was using a thing, the trope that was eventually used as the first appearance of Joker, which is to, at the stroke of midnight, so-and-so banker will will receive some sort of thing, and that guy just dies with a smile on his face. So that was this character, and again, that sort of gets split up into the Batman-Joker dichotomy. And if you look at the origin of that term, and I think the name of this character I'm thinking of is very similar to Joker. It's something with a J, and it's a French name, I think. But when that name is being invoked, the kind of Joker is sort of like the Joker and the thief, this archetype of someone who's not taking life seriously, as opposed to the law-abiding, upstanding, Boy Scout citizen, I guess. So he's the kind of like the anarchist. He's the complicated. He's the anti-civilization character, whereas Batman becomes the order, bringing back law and order. And it's evolved since then. It's more complicated than that. But it's interesting to look at the origins, where these things came from. And I think I mentioned last time that Birth of a Nation was kind of in there somewhere, in an uncomfortable place. I think they're people who were inspired by or created the Bat, which inspired Batman. Batman was essentially a ripoff of. Was loosely taken.
There's also this German expressionist film. I just looked it up. It was a German silent film called The Man Who Laughs. And
right.
If you look at that imagery of the Man Who Laughs, that is the basis for the modern Joker look, the iconography. I'll put that link in the chat.
And that story, that's Victor Hugo, who's behind Les Mis, and there's a huge class struggle there. You have a person who's like, he has a birthright, he's allowed to be, but no one will take him seriously because of how he looks. Right. And it's something there's something to be taken from there, I think. And again, it's also a critique of the upper class. That kind of stuff comes out of there, and which is what I think why the new Joker movie sort of brought those themes back, because I think they did enough, looking into the character to go, okay, let's take it a few steps back from Jared Leto. From
Jared Leto being just like a punk, tattooed.
Yeah, and then, I think Leto was just trying to go with what he's seeing in the comic books, sort of fresh styled. Joker, but also, and that takes, The Dark Knight did that too. Was it The Dark Knight Returns, where the older sort of Joker, and he's like wearing a white suit. He looks more like 80s or 90s. That's I think where that attempt comes at, to modernize him. But he ends up being this completely unrespectable, just like annoying. It's not. At least the Joker has some sort of like attitude to him, or like freeness that I think everyone kind of appreciates. There was a whole era when people were using Heath Ledger's Joker as like their avatar, as a sort of like I relate with this character. Yikes, you know, that's not necessarily a good thing. This is
Why
like
so
a,
serious?
but Batman and Joker have one thing in common. They're both people who had trauma, childhood trauma. Batman is living with his childhood trauma. I hear that in the new movie, his Batcave is like right outside the mausoleum, possibly where the Waynes are. So that's like
Yeah.
some another level of like he's that close to his dead parents all the time. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm looking forward to that level of
Yeah.
like drama there. You know, the
Yeah, it
character.
really does look intensely dramatic, which I'm looking forward to. I hope I hope it's just not all drama all day. Like, there's always a nice, particularly with the Joker, there's always a darkly funny bit that the Joker can do, except for Jared Leto. Just, I didn't laugh at all when he was in the Suicide Squad. He, I argue and maintain that Jared Leto's Joker in Suicide Squad can be completely excised from the film, and it does not change the film whatsoever.
It really doesn't. It's sad. It's like you want to see more, or just get rid of him altogether. Because what the hell, you know? What is he even doing there? Like, it's just it's just edited in there. Man, that movie, just from the first 5 minutes of watching it, I'm like, oh god, this is a nightmare already.
Yeah.
How the intro is edited, I'm like, really? What is this, like a cutscene from a video game?
It really was. I mean, we should probably talk about that on, like, I feel like Batman and the Joker would be a really good topic to discuss.
Yeah, well, I think I just repeat all like half the stuff I just said right here, but
we can
definitely
go into it.
Hero villain. We can do several hero villain.
I would love that.
Because I love the dichotomy. I love seeing weighing of the extremes, especially nowadays. You know, extreme. It's extreme times, man. Everybody's on a side. Everybody's on a side.
And I just love The Dark Knight for so many reasons, particularly the two scenes where the Joker is like, "Come on, Batman, come on, kill me, run into me because I will win with my chaos by making you break your one rule." And Batman has to constantly adhere to the rule that Joker constantly wants him to break, and it's such a fun dynamic. Even at the end when he catches Joker from falling off of the building, and Joker says, "You complete me." Like, that's exactly the hero villain dynamic is one that ought to be so compelling in that fashion, like that they need each other but also completely oppose each other, which is
it's the whole point of the story. It's like, if you don't have that, you know, they tell you in Screenwriting 101, you know, your character has to have an arc and has to go through something, learn something. Otherwise, what's the point? You're just seeing, being shown something, and therefore you don't know how to relate to it in any way. And I think the best stories are the kind that, like, you know, not only touch the times, but like get a character who's like relatable, complex, realistic, you know, and or at least, and one way of doing that is to have the dichotomy of like, all right, what are we arguing about here? Justice? Are we arguing about justice? Are we arguing about truth? Are we arguing about perception? You know, and you got to have that kind of balance in there. Otherwise, it's just like, I hate movies where everyone is right. You know, where every character is like somehow right, and there's only one wrong character, and then they're there to embolden the right characters. I like stories where everyone thinks they're right, but everyone's wrong in some way or another, because that's more like reality to me. That's like, you know, each of us don't have the whole part of the story. That's why we come together and talk to each other. Even just talking is the basic step of storytelling. You're like, we could just sit here silently, but I need to say something because we need to have something happen. You know, that's why we're speaking. Like, it's a basic like start of storytelling, and then from then on you're weighing averages constantly. And a lot of people get lost in the matrix of language into thinking that these extremes really exist, but there's no way to really build a hologram between us without first saying, you know, what temperature it is exactly by creating the dichotomy for you. Like, that's the only way that we can communicate, is for me to set the boundaries of what the world is that we're discussing. Otherwise, that's what a proper sentence is: subject and predicate. Otherwise, it's just expressions of air.
Well, and in terms of characters in films, every time a character speaks, they ought to be communicating something. They are trying to get something across to another character or to the audience. So there needs to be that that compulsion. There needs to be that weight behind whatever they say, no matter what it is. In a movie, if they say something, it is to get that point into the other character to get that to come across. So yeah.
All right, man. I think I'm tapping out because my voice is starting to get scratchy now. It's like this is probably the most talking to you is probably the most I talk in like a day these days because most of the time it's just like me and my wife saying short sentences to each other or whatever, not having like 3-hour conversations or whatever. How long this was.
The shorthand. Well, it's good practice, and thanks for joining me.
Well, thanks for having me as always. It's always a blast, and I always like talking to you.
Yeah, you're a great guest, man, and you've got great insight and great ideas about all of this stuff. And you know what? We both love Jim Carrey, so that's fun.
Yes. Yes, we can bond on that.
And everybody who tuned in today, thank you for watching and thank you for contributing to the show. Tomorrow, I'll be back, and along with our friends, the Rock Biter, the classic Rock Biter, will be back. Thank you, Mallon. Yes, this was fun. All right, get out of here, Rock Biter. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Mallon. And see you soon. Bye, guys.